Now, Jennifer Savage has also been investigating how student life fared when met with a quake. Mum's not home to pull out the emergency kit, so how prepared were Christchurch youth for a world without power and water?
I mean, you see the ads on TV and it's like, quake safe your home, and you sort of think, it won't ever happen to us, especially in Christchurch. I don't know about everyone else, but I just didn't expect it to happen.
This is Jacob Brown, one of many university students in Christchurch who had never considered preparing for a civil emergency. I visited some young people and asked how they coped when a quake shook up their flat.
I was in the doorway before I heard what was going on.
Yeah, I fell out of bed and then was in the doorway. I had to get changed first.
Despite everything we've been told in school, I just stayed in bed hoping it would end. I didn't know what to do, and there was things falling down in my room. I didn't get under the doorway. I just stayed in there and just hoped that it would end.
I was like, well, what's this? Stayed in bed, didn't get up, and then I was like, I should probably get up now, and then I realised that the clock had gone off, so there was no power. Went out into the lounge and there was nothing, and we couldn't turn the taps on, and everybody was just huddling there going, what do we do?
When it struck, I woke up, and it honestly took me about 10 seconds to realise that it was an earthquake. I just didn't expect earthquakes to happen in Christchurch. It's not on a fault line. Well, I didn't think it was on a fault line.
It's this attitude of unawares which worries Chandrika Kumaran, the National Coordinator for Civil Defence Public Education.
We're quite confident that the younger kids are getting that message across and are going home and talking to their parents. We do have a concern that the older secondary school kids and possibly people in their early 20s are not as they might have learned it in school, but they haven't really thought about it.
She says university students are an especially vulnerable group as they miss the modern push on civil defence education in schools, and mostly aren't living with parents or older people who usually take some precautions, like having torches, bottled water and tinned food.
Yeah, so your power was off.
Yeah.
How did you then see where you were going?
Cell phone lights. They were the only light we had, and we had no internet either, and we didn't have a radio, so we had absolutely no idea what was going on.
And then, of course, later on in the morning is when we found out that we had no water. Our water actually went off, which is when we just went down to pack and down to save and just stocked up on water. And I think we got some of the last big bottles of because they were just flying out the door.
So although students were largely caught off guard with no pre-prepared food, water, torches or radios, those I spoke to had learned a thing or two for a next time.
I think I'll get like a torch or something.
But now I'll be making sure that things that are valuable be sort of put down with blue tack or whatever, and maybe just have some bottles of water, tinned food just there in case something like this ever happens again.
This kind of lesson learned is precisely the message Civil Defence wants to push.
We use a line quite often. We say, don't think if, think when.
And with aftershock still rolling through, this revised attitude is exactly the wake-up many students needed. I'm Jennifer Savage for InFocus.
Now Grace Cocker examines exactly why these frightening aftershocks are still torturing us Cantabrians 6 days after the initial strike.
Earthquakes. We all know it involves tectonic movement, few fault lines and usually a trail of destruction. The 7.1 magnitude earthquake that hit Christchurch and surrounding areas on Saturday morning is a perfect example. But since the initial quake, the city has been traumatised and plagued by a continuous stream of severe aftershocks. The question most Cantabrians are now asking is why?
No, I don't know what causes them. I just know that they do happen for days and longer, and it's not very nice.
It was a bit scary. It's a bit fun as well.
According to Canterbury University lecturer Mark Quigley, aftershocks are nothing to be worried about. It's just the fault lines moving back into place.
Those aftershocks are basically the stickier parts of the fault that are slipping to recover that whole earthquake movement, but they're kind of just like sticky parts that rupture after the main earthquake.
Fellow geologist Dr. Ken Gledhill, lead manager of geohazards for GNS Science, compared them to a shoulder injury.
The analogy is what we really need. It's kind of like you dislocate, say, your shoulder or something, and if you didn't put it back in, it would have to somehow accommodate that dislocation.
Earthquakes have hit other parts of the country in the last few days. Hawke's Bay receiving a nice 5.6 magnitude earthquake. But is there a connection? Should New Zealanders be concerned at our fault line's recent and, quite frankly, unwanted movements? Dr. Mark Quigley believes the Christchurch quake has not stressed other fault lines.
We don't really understand fault stress triggering on that sort of scale. My suspicion is probably not, but it's a focus of ongoing research.
And with mass speculation of another big one hitting the region in the following weeks, Dr. Ken Gledhill says people should stay braced for more aftershocks.
The likelihood that there'll be a magnitude 6 in the next week or so is still pretty high, and certainly ones like we saw overnight will definitely happen.
But thankfully, Cantabrians will be able to breathe a sigh of relief. Dr. Mark Quigley says aftershocks will eventually decrease, taking with it the possibility of another 7.1.
The magnitude of aftershocks generally decreases on the scale of days to weeks to months, but the chances of getting another really big earthquake on this fault are very, very slim. I mean, basically zero.
Some good news at last after a terrifying and traumatising 5 days. I'm Grace Cocker for InFocus.
Now, the state of emergency has been extended following the ongoing aftershocks which are hampering relief efforts. The order's been in place since Saturday. Willie Nichols now joins us live. Willie, what exactly is a state of emergency?
Hi Sam. Well, it's being used as a bit of a buzz phrase at the moment, but in a nutshell, it puts a region on alert. It basically allows the authorities to suspend ordinary work and essential services, such as we can see happening in the CBD at the moment. Now, it's set to last till Wednesday, but that can always be changed. But the state of emergency was just one aspect Christchurch Mayor Bob Parker attributed for the city's recovery.
I want to thank all of the people who are involved, and it's great to see Defence Forces here, the arrival of something like 500 volunteers over in the Avonside area.
The Council and Civil Defence have been coordinating the clean-up for over 5 days now and are beginning to move on from the CBD. Yesterday, the assessors and special teams began looking more extensively at other areas in strife, such as Avonside, Bexley and Dallington, as well as Sydenham and other struggling business districts. Bob Parker and his team met with the Minister in charge of the recovery, Jerry Brownlee, this week, and Parker says he was assured Cantabrians wouldn't be put through more pain.
We're not going to the ratepayers and asking them for a pile of money and blowing the rates out, that this funding has to come from different sources.
40% of that funding will come through insurance, with the government talking about filling the remaining deficit. While water is now safe to drink in most parts of the region, there still remains around 200 houses without power. The CEO of power company Orion, Roger Sutton, wants the whole region switched on by the end of the week before they begin looking at the long-term issues.
We're feeling pretty positive. Our guys are tired. A lot of them have done sort of 14-hour days, and we're looking forward to slowing down a bit and then getting right into the recovery process.
Police took around 660 calls in the 2.5 hours after the quake and have brought in 60 more police from around New Zealand. Inspector John Price says he can't fault his men's commitment.
You hurt within your own organisation in these sort of crises, and we have 21 staff in our Canterbury district who have lost their own homes. They've all come to work. They've all stepped up. To me, I'm very proud.
Fire services continued assessing residential properties yesterday, adding to the 500 they'd already completed. The Army has also been very visible in the city, with another 150 soldiers, sailors and airmen added to the 250 that arrived on Monday. Colonel Roger McCullen says as well as liaising with the other emergency services, the Army's been all over the region lending a hand.
Sandbagging on the Waimakariri stop bank. We've also placed a number of soldiers on shifts at the Addington Welfare Centre. Probably the most challenging was the movement of 23,000 chickens in a very short period of time.
With tremors continuing and a lot of uncertainty still hanging over Canterbury, all services will remain on high alert. Willie Nichols for InFocus.
Thanks very much for that, Willie. Now, I hear you've got some latest news on some road closures.
Yeah, well, I was just on my way back to the newsroom actually only an hour ago, and two police cars flew past me down Riccarton Road there. So I got on the phones to Police Communications, and they basically confirmed to me that they've cordoned a section of Riccarton Road off from Straven Road there. It seems there's a suspect building on the corner that may be in danger of collapse, but we'll have more details as they come to hand.
Before we go, a taste of what's coming up on tomorrow's show. Jennifer Savage will join me live to talk about the city, how the city is coping with the huge influx of trash following the quake. Willie Nichols also joins us. He'll be prowling around the city tonight to see the relief effort after dark. Now that's all for today's Earthquakes special edition of InFocus. We hope you enjoyed the show. We know we certainly enjoyed reporting for you. We'll be back tomorrow and every Wednesday and Friday from midday right here on Mode 96.1. Don't forget you can catch us online. Join our Facebook page by clicking the link on the Mode website. That website is moderadio.co.nz. I'm Sam Mulgrew and that's InFocus, bringing your news into focus.